Hey, soccer fans. Nick back with the Feed the Fire podcast after a 2-week hiatus, and we're still talking Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. Thanks to everyone who has continued to download prior episodes, to write in glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com, and interact with me on social media at glasshouseSoccer across all your social channels. I really do appreciate it. Looking forward to doing a couple back-to-back episodes of the show here to kind of get us back on track and back in the groove of all things Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. So we've got a couple games of the Fire to recap and then look ahead at their next match against Minnesota United. And then in my second episode, we are going to look at all the news that has come out around the Chicago Fire organization over the last couple of weeks. There's been some stuff going on in the front office that's not too favorable. Then there's been some extensions and contracts that have been given out. So there's been a lot going on with the Chicago Fire. There's some updates from the stadium as well. And so we're going to cover that all in the next episode. This one I'm going to dedicate to the last two matches and the upcoming match. So the Chicago Fire's victory against New England, the loss against New York City, and their upcoming match at Minnesota United. I do want to remind everyone that the show is brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water, available at your local 7-Eleven. Make sure you get out there, support our sponsors. We're kind of in that second summer here in Chicago. We had that little cold dip. Now we're back up. I was outside driving around with my windows down and just soaking in the sun today. So when you're out doing whatever it is you do on these second summer Chicago days, make sure you stop by your 7-Eleven, grab a bottle of Skira Icelandic Spring Water, and stay hydrated. With that, let's get into our content. So a couple of weeks back, it was on Saturday, September 6th, the Chicago Fire hosted the New England Revolution, and they pulled out a very nervy 3-2 victory. I thought the Fire would be able to win this game. I thought it'd be a little bit more comfortable for them, especially playing at SeatGeek Stadium, where they have been undefeated this season. They got off to a great start. Jonathan Bamba scores in the second minute. Zinkernagel doubles the lead in the 10th minute, and Kuipers in the 68th puts the Fire up 3-0. But New England comes in and capitalizes on a couple of defensive mistakes where they are able to score one. Miller gets one in the 78th. Omar Gonzalez, I think, gives up another penalty, and it's Carlos Hill to convert in the 94th minute. So there was a few minutes there of stoppage time where the fans were really nervous, and you could feel the nerves in the building. But I will say it's good to have that emotion. It's good to have that excitement from the fans. And I'll tell you something else. These supporter sections sounded fantastic at this match. They were unified, they were together, they were loud. They even tried to get the crowd back into it with some call and answer chants. I hope you guys, if you're not part of the supporter section, listen for that at the next home games and participate it. Get your sections going, bring the noise, bring the energy, and you know that the Chicago Fire play better when the fans are into it and with them. Didn't get that effect in the New York City game as much, but you could really feel something start to build in this Revolution match at home at SeatGeek Stadium. So let's take a look at the Chicago Fire lineups and see how they rolled their squad out against New England. Chris Brady in goal, who picked up a yellow card, I think, for time wasting at the end there. Your four-man left back line. Gutman on the left, Rogers and Elliott in the center, and Jonathan Dean out on the right. So this was a choice that they had to make. With Carlos Terán transferred, who comes in the middle? Joel Waterman was the signing, but he was still away on international duty. So do you bring up Sam Rogers? Do you bring in Christopher Cupps? Do you drop back Mauricio Pineda and have him play a little center back? Well, the decision was to go with Sam Rogers to start. And in the back line, they bent, but they didn't break until the end of that second half. Your midfield starting trio, Jay Davila, Brian Gutierrez, and Andre Franco getting hit. I think that's his first start with the Fire. And your attackers, Joe Bamba, Hugo Kuipers, and Philip Zinkernagel. Definitely not going to mess with perfection there up front. One of the highest scoring teams in the league, the Fire are, with some of the top scoring players in the league in Kuipers and Zinkernagel. We're seeing Greg Berhalter and his staff put a lot of faith in Jay Davila in kind of that defensive mid, transitional mid, pivot kind of a guy. You saw him have a very good game here where he was able to pick the ball up and drive it forward. He is looking to take the space. And we even saw that in the New York game, though his New York game was definitely not as good as the Revolution kind of reckoning back to some of those earlier MLS games where he was still finding his footing a bit, figuring out his teammates some. But in this Revs game and in a stretch of games where he's been able to start and have the confidence from the coaching staff and his teammates, you see him playing a lot better. He is seeing the field better. I think he's finally adjusting to an MLS pace and an MLS style. He's still got to work on his technical ability, a little bit on his touches. His strength is driving into that space and then being able to distribute the ball when the defenders come in to close in on him. Also, he's a big physical presence too. So I'd like to see him make sure he gets his defensive assignments down, because that's when we give up goals, right? Just with every team when there's a defensive breakdown. But as a defensive midfielder, you have to hold your shape. You have to hold your assignments. You can't lose runners. You can't let, especially if Gutman and Dean or if the outside backs are going to push up, and you're going to play up the wings, all the more reason that Davila needs to hone in on the defensive side of things too. We also saw a lot of great play over the last couple games from Brian Gutierrez, who really in that New England game, I think he had 2 assists, was really, I don't know if it was just film study, dumb luck, or when you're good you make your own luck, because Gutierrez was totally clogging up New England's passing lanes, picking off passes, starting counterattacks. That's how they got a couple goals. It was fantastic play from him all around. So I don't want to spend any more time on that because we've got a couple more games to go. But it's great to see Gutierrez, if he's not going to play as much defense, if you can let Franco and Davila or Orahel and Pineda or Acosta and whoever else really lock down those D-mid kind of positions, and Gutierrez can push up and spark the attack and counter and kind of high press a little those defensive midfielders of the opposing team, you're going to see a lot more offensive production from him, and I think it's only going to improve the Chicago Fire. Now, that being said, there was some talk that there are other teams in MLS who are interested in him, but the Fire weren't going to give him up. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do see him go for a good transfer fee in the offseason over the winter. Andre Franco, another respectable game from him as he kind of gets used to MLS and his teammates here. And it's Bamba, like Kuipers, and Zinkernagel, like I said, are 3 attackers who all get the goals. Fantastic. Love seeing Bamba back on the score sheet. Love seeing him embarrass Matt Turner. Turner thought Bamba would try to chip him, jumps up in the air, and Bamba just touches it right by him and slots it in a practically empty net. So great control by Bamba. We did see some defensive subs come in later on in the game, and we have to take a look at Omar Gonzalez. And a lot of people were critical of this signing because Omar Gonzalez, older guy, we just got to plug him in to fill some holes. Other people were very excited about it. Here's a veteran MLS player who might even be transitioning into a coaching role. You saw him walking off the field with some of the other defenders. I think it was in the subsequent New York game. You saw him walking off, I want to say, with Chris Cupps, or maybe it was the New England game, talking with Cupps and kind of showing him where to go, what to do in certain scenarios. So maybe coaching is in his future. But he is brought in the 90th minute just to kind of help see out the game. I can't recall if Sam Rogers picked up a knock. I think he did. I think he was maybe cramping a little bit. But then 3 minutes later, he commits a foul in the box, draws a yellow card, gives up the PK that Carles Hill converts, and oh my goodness, is this going to happen again? Are the Fire going to blow a 3-game lead? You start to get those feelings creeping in. Not the same old Fire, though. We're not going to go down that narrative. They are able to see it out. Other subs that came in, Orahel and Haile Selassie, coming in the 76th. It's nice to see that when things are going well, especially when you get an early lead like that, Berhalter is going to let his guys play. You saw New England bring in Olmsberg and Oyroth in the 69th minute to try and change up a little of their formation, try and maybe spark something, exploit a gap at some point in the Fire, and then it's nice to have Berhalter be able to react to that properly by getting in Orahel and Haile Selassie, fresh legs to control the midfield and to counter and to relieve pressure. We did see Tom Barlow and Kellen Acosta come in the 83rd minute for Kuipers and Gutierrez. Again, fresh legs. Fire didn't need to change anything tactically there, just needed to see the game out at that point, and that's what they did, albeit a little nervy there at the end. Looking at the stats, the Fire had 49% possession, put up 14 shots, 7 on goal, had 1 blocked. They had 526 total passes at 86.3% accuracy, as opposed to New England's 479 passes. So the Fire controlled this game. Even though the possession was fairly even, the Fire were in control of this game until the ends of each halves, I think, when New England was really pressing, and the Fire were just trying to see it out. The Fire took 8 corners, and New England had 6, so this was a very up-and-down game. 4 crosses in from the Fire, 3 offsides called. They outdueled New England in the air, 15-13. They had an XG of 3.4, which is fantastic. That is one of the higher totals that I have seen for the Fire this season, and they just about hit that mark. There were a couple other chances they could have put in as well. Brady's credited with 3 saves. Defense had 10 clearances, 8 fouls, 2 yellow cards on the night. So the Chicago Fire take that momentum from the victory at New England and bring it into their match against New York City. But before we get into that, we had a great feature from John Donovan. Haven't heard from him in a few weeks. John, so happy to hear your voice again. John sent us in his takes from all things after this Chicago Fire New England game. Let's turn it over to John.
Nick, John Donovan here talking about the MLS and the Chicago Fire. I'm in Iceland, but I did have a chance to watch the game on my phone, and it really was an exciting game. I think our coach is finally getting the squad together that he needs to rip into the playoffs. There's 2 positions that I really wonder about on the squad, and one would be center midfielder. I still don't think the Devalia guy is... he doesn't work to get himself open at all, and that's that position. He turns the ball back about 75% of the time, which doesn't create those beautiful angle passes that work so well in the offense. If I was the coach, I think I would move Franco or Gutierrez into the middle. I'm impressed with Franco. He seemed to really do the deal. I know that his career was sort of tanking a little bit before he came here, and he's very anxious to get it back. I would start the midfield of Franco, Gutierrez, and Oriel. I really like the way Oriel turns towards the offense every time. He'll take a peek at the defense, but he's really offensive-oriented. He reminds me a bit of the great midfielder from Portugal. So, another thing, Nick, that I think is really kind of interesting is our coach seems to give guys 2 chances, which sometimes is a bit too much. Now, he gave Carlos Terran a ride. Klopas last year should have cut him a long time ago. Tremendous athlete, but got really rocked mentally during the games. He would just kind of lose it. I wish him the best in Brazil. He did real well under C.J. Brown, but he just didn't click after that. And then in that midfield spot for the playoffs, I think I would move, as I said, Gutierrez in that spot or Franco. I think they have a better shot at feeding that forward line. Speaking of the forward line, what a threesome they've got this year. All of them can score. Very impressive. I believe, with the proper midfield, they could really go into the playoffs strong. The other spot that I'm really concerned about, Nick, is that backup center fullback spot. Rogers is adequate. He plays well. He doesn't make stupid fouls. He can play with a yellow card, which is really important in that spot. But the backup using Omar Gonzalez, come on. He was losing games last year. And this year, twice we've been bitten by old Omar. That red card, that foul in the penalty area was really dumb. I don't think he has the speed to stay with these forwards anymore. I would have used Cups back there. I know that he's nervous about it. He's barely in the playoffs now. But it would be Cups as the backup on that spot. Dean is playing well. I mean, he's a reliable right back. The young man from Portugal has great offensive abilities. But boy, is he's a liability on the backside. So 2 areas that I would work on if I was old Greg would be backup fullback, and I would not use Omar Gonzalez. He would be off the roster. He would be off the game day roster if it was for me. And then center mid, and it's one of those 3 guys. Oriel might not be strong enough to take that position, but Devalia is just not working. It's he's lost them 2 games with stupid cards, and running over a guy in the zone. So if we're going in the playoffs, I certainly hope we go in with the proper squad. Brady had a tremendous game. I mean, that last save he pulled off was very instinctual. I mean, the goal that was scored by that young 17-year-old guy, that was almost unstoppable. I mean, he just drilled it. And it was just, even though Brady went down, he didn't go down quick enough. The team is starting to round out. You can feel that they're getting their shoes together. They're playing well. I'm excited about the playoffs. So that's about it, Nick. Good be talking to everybody again. I enjoyed this. I've had a lot of work to do and not been able to focus any time on the MLS. Have a good day, Nick.
And again, John, thank you so much for contributing to the show. And a reminder to everyone that John's segment is brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water, available at your local 7-Eleven. John, shoot me a text sometime. We got to catch up about life and things outside of soccer as well. It's been a while, my friend. I hope you're doing real well. Now, again, let's turn our attention to the Chicago Fire's next matchup. This time, a disappointing 3-1 loss at home at Soldier Field to New York City FC. Zinkernagel got the scoring started for the Chicago Fire in the 13th minute, and things looked to be a repeat of that New England Revolution game. But unfortunately, it was a repeat of the New York City game that the Fire played earlier on in the season in New York City, where they went out to a 1-0 lead, and I think it's the same scoreline, 3-1 loss from the Fire. Fernandez equalizes in the 40th. Martinez puts the Pigeons ahead in the 57th. And Reld converts in stoppage time 90+3 to seal the 3 points for New York City. Now, this is huge for 2 reasons. Number one, the Chicago Fire are playing a playoff team, a better team, and they do not know how to beat them. And number 2, this really hurt the Chicago Fire's chances of getting a home play-in game and potentially even moving up to 7 and avoiding the top seed in the Eastern Conference. This was a 6-point swing, as we know. New York City and the Fire were both jockeying for that, kind of 6 to 9 spot at the playoff run in the table there, and this really hurts from a confidence standpoint. Although listening to today, September 18th, Thursday's pregame press conference, you wouldn't hear that. You wouldn't think that was a problem for the coach, as well as Sergio Orhel, Mauricio Pineda, and Chris Brady. They were all there at the press conference talking about their new contract extensions. We'll get into that in the back-to-back episode, the part 2 of the back-to-back here. But yeah, this was a really kind of a demoralizing loss. You saw the Fire regress to when the defense was collapsing, Jay having some poor games. Let's take a look at the lineup and see how New York City was able to exploit it. So the lineup, very similar to that match against New England. Brady in net, Gutman on the left. Jack Elliott moved to left center, and Joel Waterman came in on right center. And it was nice getting Waterman in the lineup, allowing Rodgers some time to heal a little bit. And if he did need to come out, we weren't asking Cups, who actually was not in the lineup that day, or Pineda to go 90 minutes on the back line. Jonathan Dean on the outside, right back. Leo Barroso was either still, I think he was a last-minute decision. Maybe not a last-minute decision, but he was listed as out with a hamstring injury, as we heard today, and even may not be able to go against Minnesota. They're going to test him out, as Greg Berhalter said in the press conference today, on Friday the 19th, and make sure that hamstring's 100%. Because if a hammy's not 100%, and if he goes out there even for a 15, 20-minute appearance at the end of the match, all it takes is one wrong cut, and then he's back, set back 2-3 weeks worth of recovery and rehab. So let's make sure that he's taken care of, especially for these younger players. I mean, we know the kind of knocks they're going to take in the professional game. These guys are still growing, and they still need to be able to have the right rehab and rest and get back to 100%. So I'm in no rush to see Barroso come in on Saturday if the doctors don't clear him and if it's not the safe thing to do, because we really need that depth come, hopefully, that play-in game. So that was the change in the back. Waterman in for Sam Rogers, and then Elliott moves to left center, Waterman in right center. Your midfield was the same, Davila, Gutierrez, and Franco, and your attacking still the same, Bamba, Kuipers, and Zinkernagel. Now, where New York City had had the advantage was being able to press and to pull Chicago out of their defensive position. Goals were given up when Gutman gets caught upfield in New York counterattacks, when Waterman gets pulled out of position, when the midfielders aren't tracking back the runners. These were all the things that the Fire were doing at the beginning of the season and giving up lots of goals, giving up leads, and unfortunately it's a step back. Now, is that because we now see Waterman in the lineup with Franco and Davila, all new players this season, and Franco and Waterman just this summer transfer window? Possibly. I just think that New York is on another level from the Chicago Fire. And I know you fans don't want to hear it, but the way New York has been playing, the way they've got a guy like Maxi Morales who can just dictate the game and play on New York City's terms, regardless if they're in their tiny phone booth of a stadium in New York or if they're coming to Soldier Field to play on it. And by the way, people are saying, oh, the field was terrible, blah, blah, blah. Well, look, both teams play on the field, right? That's out of our control. You just got to control what you can control until we get that new stadium. We're looking forward to that. But yeah, you saw that they were able to pick apart the Fire, that they were able to pull them out of possession. You saw the Fire scrambling quite a bit in this match. And if this is how Chicago needs to be able to calm themselves in these kind of moments, and that's what I think is missing, that calming presence. It's difficult for guys like Bamba and Zinkernagel who have experience, who have played in big stages across Europe, right? Bamba winning the French league several years back with Lille. When they're the attacking wingers, it's hard for them to assert control over the game and calm their teammates down because they're the ones pressing, they're the ones running, they're upfield, they're trying to score goals. It's a little difficult for Jack Elliott, who seems to be the guy to do that from a center back possession, because the Fire are building out of the back. They need to hit the right passes. He's not going to have time on the ball to say, all right, let's all settle. Let's just do a little, couple wall passes here, a couple bounce passes, just so we can kind of calm things down. That's the time when I would have loved to see Kellen Acosta come in a lot earlier and maybe take a little control of the game, or Pineda to come in a defensive mid position and take a little control of the game. Now, in this match, we saw Orahel come in the 56th minute for Franco. Right after that, New York City takes the lead. Berhalter counters, brings in Selassie for Bamba, some fresh legs on the attack, and then in the 81st, brings in Barlow for Joel Waterman, pushing the attack. Unfortunately, that equalizing goal never came. So Berhalter was trying to make some moves here. Again, coaches generally, and Berhalter especially, are much better when they can react to the opposing team making the first move. That's why if you play chess, do you prefer the black side or the white side, right? You prefer to go second in those chess matches and see what your opponent's up to and know how to counter it. I think some people do prefer to play that way, and I think from what I've seen, that's when Berhalter is at his best. Good otherwise, but at his best when he can kind of say, all right, they're putting in these different players, they're making attacking moves. How can we counter that with our next batch of subs? And also, it's a good test of the Fire's bench as well. It's great to have a player of Selassie's caliber coming in off the bench. It would be great to have a guy with Acosta's experience and poise coming in off the bench. So that's where I'm going to be a little critical. I think this game got out of control early for the Fire, even though it was a 1-1 score at halftime. And I would have loved to see Acosta come in at some point and kind of calm the Fire down and be able to kind of distribute the ball and play through him a little bit. He was available. He was on the bench. I don't think he did not get into the match. Again, Berhalter only using 3 subs in that game. Statistically speaking, a decent game for the Fire if you want to look at statistics. Again, the only one that really matters at the end of the day is the goal differential there. But the Fire ended up with 48 possession on 14 shots, 3 on goal though. So again, not creating those dangerous opportunities. Had 6 shots blocked, 516 total passes at 85%. So decent passing game, but again, not anything in the dangerous areas. Only 2 corners. So again, you see the Fire were not getting down into the wings, not getting the ball forward into dangerous areas and having New York City have to make some safe clearances and giving up corners. Only 2 crosses. So this was a different style. The Fire kind of wanted to play more up the middle, and it did not play well. Only 1.2 expected goals for the Fire, 2 saves credited to Brady, 4 clearances and 7 fouls credited to the defense. No yellow cards for the Fire there. New York picked up 1. So this was a match. In the first half, you saw what the Fire could do. In the second half, you saw, I'm sorry, I was thinking the New England match. In the first half, you saw the best of the Fire. In the second half, you saw the worst of the Fire. Here, you saw the best and the worst of the Fire in the first half and just kind of tailed off in the second half there. So these are things that the Fire are going to need to correct moving forward, that defensive shape. Hopefully having the extra week of training with Waterman, with Radojevic, and Franco all working in a little bit here will help them maintain that shape, knowing what Berhalter wants to do. Again, you don't want to see players reverting to old habits. We did see Joe Waterman pushing up quite a bit, and I don't think that's something that we need him to do in Chicago. We need him to help control that back line, be a good outlet for the keeper and for the outside backs, and really shut down teams' attack across the middle. I think Brady's very good at aerials and picking out crosses out of the air. I haven't looked at the stats. I don't know if anyone has those numbers on Chris Brady, or if you want to bounce over to fbref.com and see what his percentage is about dealing with crosses like that. I think Brady's fairly good about it. Big commanding presence, confident, strong, not afraid to go up and mix it up with opposing players, and even if needs to, jump over one of our defenders to grab it. So if Waterman and Elliott can stay back and control that middle of the field, control their box along with Brady, but also control that zone 14, as they call it, that area right in front of the penalty box, any passes that are made in and out of that area have a much higher percentage of turning into a shot or a goal or another key pass. So if they can command that area, then I think that would be the role. But when Waterman's pushing upfield, he's pulling himself out of position. I don't think Berhalter likes high center backs as much, especially if he's going to send his outside backs up. So that's something we got to keep an eye on, is Waterman's shape, and then is Jay able to make the turns and find the space in the midfield? If he can't distribute that ball and draw defenders of the opposition out of position, again, New York played such a good defensive game here, then it's going to be another long day for the Fire. So they've got to get more creative. They've got to figure out how to break down these better defensive teams like New York City, at least how they played in this last match. Now, who's coming in to play the Fire this weekend? Actually, nobody. It's an away game for the Fire. The Fire are heading up to Minnesota, where they will face the Loons, a Western Conference opponent. Minnesota has had an okay run of form lately, but they have played a lot of games here. They have just come off a 120-minute spectacular in the U.S. Open Cup semifinals just Wednesday the 17th against Austin FC. The good news is they were at home and they don't have to travel. But again, they played 120 minutes on the 17th and now have to host the Chicago Fire, who are going to be desperate for points to maintain a play-in position 3 days later. Before that, they played Minnesota on the 13th, they played San Diego on the 13th at San Diego, winning 3-1. So they had a game on the 13th, the 17th, and now coming up on the 20th. So it's going to be a test of Minnesota's depth and bench. Now, what have they got to lose if they go all out against the Fire? Well, you know, they've clinched a playoff spot, I believe, already. So I don't think there's anything they're too worried about that. But what they really need to be doing is worrying about the rest of their Western Conference schedule, because after the Chicago Fire, they travel to Colorado, come home to Kansas City, and then travel to the Galaxy. So to finish that conference play strong and maintain a top 4 spot in the Western Conference. And yes, they have clinched a playoff spot. They're on 54 points after 30 games, but the last thing they want to do is just coast into the playoffs and get leapfrogged by Vancouver, LAFC, and Seattle and end up with an away game to start the playoffs. So that Minnesota's got to be vigilant, but hopefully they realize that they can take a bit of a breath against the Chicago Fire, kind of regroup. It's not going to really impact them in the standings if they lose to the Fire, a non-conference opponent, and the Fire can take advantage of that. Now, the game kicks off at 7:30 up in Minnesota. And who are the players that the Fire have to look out for? Well, their top goal scorer, Tane Oluwasei, has got 10 goals in the MLS this season. Kelvin Yeboah's got 9, and you have Anthony Markanich with 7. Robin Lod steps up from his position, puts in 5 on the season. Pereira with 4, and then a handful of players with 3, 2, and 1 goals each. Now, who are their playmakers? Who are the guys feeding them? You've got Pereira leading the team with 10 assists, Oluwase with 8 assists, so he looks to be atop the team standings for points, 10 goals, 8 assists. Robin Lod with 6 assists, Michael Boxall, Nico Romero each have 5 assists, and then a number of players with 4, 3, 2, and 1. So Minnesota plays a good team game. You want to look at key passes? It's far and away Pereira. Joaquin Pereira has 63 key passes. The next highest on his team, Robin Lod, with 27. So when it comes to creativity and who they want to play through, it's Pereira. That's the guy they got to look out for. The Chicago Fire need to shut down the 26-year-old Argentinian designated player. So he's playing like his designation you'd expect from a DP Argentinian. Definitely the playmaker on Minnesota. So if the Fire can keep him in check for part of this game, I'd love to see some great defensive work by either Orahel in the midfield or Davila in the midfield. If Davila is able to body him up a little bit, he's 5'11", 170, so it's not going to be an easy push off the ball. But if he gets into some dangerous areas and he starts trying to run in Waterman and Elliott, then I like that matchup for the Chicago Fire's defenders. So hopefully our midfield can lock it down, and that way Minnesota's distribution does not get rolling and give them any sort of confidence. I'd like to see another early goal. It's been the trend with the Fire these last couple games, despite the results, the mixed results, and I think that would definitely put Minnesota on their heels, hopefully put the fan base and that stadium on their heels just a little bit as well. I do think the Chicago Fire come away with a victory here, 2-1 on the road. Again, this is going to be a great opportunity for Minnesota to rotate their players, to rest them, to kind of finish the season strong against Western Conference opponents. The Fire are going to be looking for points. They need points, especially with their upcoming schedule, which I'll tell you in a few seconds here, because the Fire right now are sitting in 9th on 42 points. They are 6 points behind 8th place Orlando. That's a bit of a gap. I don't know if they're going to be able to make that gap up and get to that 8-point spot, or even push the 7-point gap between the 6th and 7th place Miami and Columbus teams. Now, Miami does have 2 games in hand on the Fire and 3 games in hand on the rest of the league because of their league's cup run. So I doubt they'll be able to catch Miami, but Chicago hopefully can hang on to that 9th spot with a little luck, catch Orlando ahead of them. Right behind the Fire in 10th place, it's the Red Bulls on 40 points. Thankfully, the Fire still have a game in hand on them. They also own the first tiebreaker. The Fire have one more win at this point, but goal differential not helping out. That recent 4-0 loss to Philly really hurt their goal differential. The Fire are only +1 on the season. 54 in favor, 53 conceded. So the Fire do need to score some goals in these next few games. We mentioned the schedule. It's not going to get any easier for the Fire. So this is where they need to take their points. They're in Minnesota this Saturday, the 20th. They're home against Columbus on the 27th. I'll see you there. And then they are at Miami on the 30th. Now, hopefully at that point, Miami just doesn't care about the regular season anymore, starts rotating their squad, but who knows what's going on down there with Mascherano's coaching. And maybe the Fire steal a point on the road against Miami, and then they finish the season at home against Toronto on October 4th and away at New England Decision Day on October 18th. So I expect 6 points from that Toronto game and that New England game. New England, by the way, today fired Caleb Porter. He has been dismissed. Obviously, not doing so well in those. Was it those second seasons or is it those first seasons? First seasons he always does poorly. In the second season he bounces back. Well, he's not getting that opportunity with New England, it seems, or it is, because he has been relieved of the head coaching duties over there. And just as a tangent, like, I never really disliked Caleb Porter. From a coaching standpoint, I think his personality really rubbed me the wrong way when I would read his quotes or see some of his interviews and post-game, pre-game stuff. Like, I don't want to call it arrogance, but he did kind of give off the I know better than you do kind of a vibe, do as I say, not as I do kind of a vibe. So I don't know how that played well in the locker rooms. Obviously, with him leaving Portland under the circumstances he did, maybe this is something to do with him, right? The old fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, or what's the common denominator in all these dismissals? The coach. But I'm trying to reflect back on his accomplishments here in MLS, and I know he's won stuff, but it always seems like it ends just so poorly for him. Anyway, hopefully New England can regroup. I would love to see a good New England team and a good Chicago Fire team going at it throughout the regular season. And yeah, let's revive that the 2000s 2010s playoff rivalry there with New England and Chicago. So I will leave you all with that. Be on the lookout for the next episode coming out very, very shortly. We're going to do some back-to-backs to get caught up on what's going on around the league as well as with the team. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, rate, review. Every little click that you make pushes us just up a little bit higher in that Google algorithm, those podcast algorithms. Whew, been a long day, can you tell? Been talking a lot. And yeah, just anything we can do to grow the show, grow the conversation around American soccer, Chicago Fire, and MLS, I'm all for it. But until then, let's go Fire.